The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Welcome back to another Canola School episode. I am your host, Kara Oosterhuis, and I have here with me Courtney Boyachek, who is with the Canola Council of Canada. How's it going today?
Good. How are you?
Good. So we are here today to talk about canola storage. It is now the time of the year when most of your, I think for the most part across the prairies, your canola is in the bin. Do you want to tell me what producers need to know when it comes to storage?
So your main thing with canola is that you want to be really monitoring your temperature and your moisture levels. Despite no matter what the temperature and moisture was coming off the field, we need to be monitoring it in the bins just because canola can be really sensitive to them, as well as canola will have a high respiration rate even for 6 weeks after when it's in the bin. So monitoring it is going to be really important coming into the winter months.
So how does seed temperature at harvest impact storage?
So the temperature of canola going into the bin is going to drive the rate of spoilage. The higher the temperature, the higher the risk for storage, the higher the storage risk, essentially. So when you're binning canola and it's still hot, even if it has low moisture, low dockage, low green seed, you should still put it on aeration to cool it down. This is going to even out the temperature throughout the bin and help remove some of the moisture from the respiring seed.
And what about seed moisture? When it comes off maybe a little too damp or a little too dry, how does that impact storage?
Yeah, so moisture and temperature kind of go hand in hand when it comes to storing canola. We like to see canola come in at about 8% moisture into the bin, but we know that doesn't always happen just due to the conditions outside. So moisture creates a really hospitable environment for mold that will trigger heating throughout the bin. So monitoring your temperature and your moisture is going to be super important.
Okay, so if it doesn't come off at that exact temperature we're kind of looking at, do you want to touch a bit on grain drying and what impacts that has?
Yeah, so grain dryers can be used when aeration or natural drying kind of fails to adequately condition the canola to the bin and once it's off the field. So this typically will occur when outdoor conditions, right, are wet and cold and that kind of thing. The one thing to note is that grain dryers typically are used for wheat and corn. So just making sure that we're calibrating our grain dryers for canola just to minimize those losses.
And how often should you actually be checking your bin? I mean, I know we all kind of say, oh yeah, check your bins, but how often should that happen?
Yeah, so for the first 6 weeks post-harvest, it's really important that you're checking them really diligently, just because the grain needs to stabilize and it still can have a really high respiration rate during that time. So every day, every second day is going to be super optimal right in that 6 week period. As we move away from that 6 week period, it's still, you don't necessarily have to be checking it as much, but it's super important to be checking it, every couple of days just to make sure that everything's okay, because hot pockets can come up really fast in the winter and it doesn't take long for that hot pocket to move throughout the bin and risk not only spoiling your grain, but also downgrading your crop.
And now I'm not trying to fearmonger here, but do you want to just elaborate a bit more on that, what could happen if you ignore your bins?
Yeah, essentially, your biggest risk is going to be spoilage and downgrading of your crop, which nobody wants. Canola is a really valuable commodity for producers, and we want to make sure that all the crop that gets into the bin gets to the elevator so that farmers can continue to farm.
And now you said once we're kind of out of that 6 week period, we don't have to be quite as diligent. What happens if we get a weather change? Like what if we all of a sudden have a spout where it's minus 40 or we all of a sudden have a spout where it's minus 10 or plus 10 for a week? How does that impact things?
Absolutely. So as we're moving into cooler temperatures, the colder air in the bin is going to start to move to the bottom and the warmer air is going to rise, creating kind of a pocket in the core of the grain, which is where typically spoilage is going to occur in the winter time. Now, cold weather really can be our friend when it comes to storing canola, but that doesn't mean that we stop monitoring our grain. As we're moving into the winter months, it's going to be a little bit we're not going to need to be checking it as much. But if we are having major fluctuations, like I can't speak for anywhere else, but in Manitoba, we very much do. We can go from -40 to -10 very quickly. So making sure that when the outdoor conditions are changing, that we are very closely monitoring the bin just to make sure. And then if there are hot pockets that occur, being able to cycle out that grain or using probes and stuff to make sure that we're cooling it down, we're going to mitigate that risk really quickly.